Okay, hello. I'm Fran Parker, Reagan Wolanski's grandmother, and I'm going to be answering some questions that she gave me about my mother, who is a Holocaust survivor. So, the first question under life questions is, what was her education like as a kid? My mother went to Greek Orthodox schools in Slovakia. She lived in a town called Yezino, and there were no public schools around. Um, so she had to go to a Greek Orthodox school. And she also lived in a community where there were not very many Jewish people. So all of her friends were Christian at her school, and she ended up having 1 year of college. The second question was, how old was she when the Holocaust started? Well, the Holocaust started in 1939, and she was still in high school then. But the orders where her father couldn't work anymore and she couldn't go to school anymore came in 1941. And she says she was about 13, and I say she was probably closer to 17. Um, but she, has never given me a firm age for herself. This third question was, what was a normal day of life for her? Well, normal day of life, her family had a farm, so she would tend the farm. She'd work with the calves and the cows, and she'd milk them, and her family made butter and milk, and she would help with all of that. She also spent a lot of time with her grandmother that lived with her. So she spent a lot of time with her grandmother, and occasionally she would go out and play with friends. But she had a very good childhood. She was a very happy kid. Question number 4, was there a lot of anti-Semitism for her before the Holocaust? Before the Holocaust, the only anti-Semitism she was aware of, and going to a Christian school, one day kids were telling her, your family killed Jesus. So she went home and she said to her dad, did we kill Jesus? And her dad said, no. This is what they say about us, but it's not true. So that was her first encounter with anti-Semitism. Question number 5, did she have a normal childhood? Yes, she had a very good childhood. Her childhood was filled with love. She got a lot of love from her family. Her father built her up. So her personality was a very strong personality. She had a lot of self-confidence, and she had a great childhood. Okay, next questions are historical event questions. So what changed in Bubby's life when she had to go to concentration camps and after the Holocaust? Okay, before she went to the concentration camp, her family went to a ghetto, and there were about 13 members in her family. And then after the ghetto, they went home for a little bit, and then they went by cattle car to Auschwitz. And the cattle train was really used for cattle, so there was no place for people to sit, if you can imagine that. They were all just shoved in like sardines. There were no bathrooms, no food, no water, and they were stuck in there for 3 days. They stopped in Krakow on the way to Auschwitz, which was in Poland. And when they stopped in Krakow, her father asked, what is going on? They really had no idea about the concentration camps. And somebody told him that there are trains coming daily with people, and they let them out, but they're not sure where they're going. Or at least they didn't say. So my mother's family knew they were going somewhere, but they had no idea where they were going. So once she arrived in Auschwitz with her family, they have what you call a selection process with Dr. Mengele. And he would basically choose who shall live and who shall die. And when she went through the selection process, when they saw her immediately, she was about 17 years old. She looked good. She was blonde hair, blue-eyed, female, Aryan looking. That means that she didn't look Jewish. And her family had children with them. Her sisters that were not with them, they had their kids. So they were carrying a number of kids with them. She had her unmarried sister, she had her parents, she had her grandmother. And when they went through the selection process, they all went to a different line. And that line took them on a truck to what was really the crematorium. They were put in the crematorium and burnt alive there. Where she was taken, it was considered showers. And when she was taken there, the first thing they did before they even let her take a shower, which was a process of dehumanization, they shaved off her hair. They took her beautiful clothes away from her. They took her nice leather shoes away. She came from an affluent family, gave her wooden shoes to wear, and gave her a striped uniform to wear. So her family, she never saw him again after the selection process, and her life forever changed. She lost 12 members of her family that day, in her immediate family, and she was the only survivor. And in her extended family of 100, she lost 90 relatives. So her life was never the same again. Number 2, how old was she when the Holocaust started? Hard to say. Oh no, that was, did she have a normal life? Okay. The second question was, what happened to Bubby and her family during the Holocaust? I already said what happened. Number 3, how did she survive? Bubby survived by sheer will. She said that her father instilled confidence in her, a lot of courage in her, and he really wanted her to survive because he didn't think anybody else would. And somebody needed to survive to tell the world what she saw. And while she was there, she wanted to live. She wanted to live more than anything. And she said whenever she was in hardships or when they would go taken from one camp to another, she went to labor camps, work camps, she would visualize her father telling her, you can do it, you can do it. And then instill the confidence to do it. So historical events. What happened to her after the Holocaust? I'm going to give you I'm going to answer kind of what happened to her after the Holocaust. After the Holocaust, Bubby returned to her home in Yazino. And when she returned to her home, she discovered that it was totally looted. All of their possessions were taken. And when she looked for family pictures of her sisters, her parents, her grandparents, just anybody from her family, when they looted her home, the neighbors that took her over her home, they got rid of all their family. They divided all of their possessions. So when she went home, Russia took over Slovakia, and it became part of the USSR. And then her home belonged to the people. That means different people divided her own house and lived in different parts of it. And it was probably one of the other hardest days of her life, because she comes home, her family is dead, and her home was basically gone. And there was no place for her even to go and sleep in her home. So one of the other neighbors let her stay at their house. And living under communism, to get food, she was starving during the concentration camps under Nazi Germany. And then when she went home, and Russia had them go in line to get food. And if you were at the end of the line, you got no food. So she was hungry again. So this next question is under continuity. And it says, how is anti-Semitism still in the world today? And what has changed and stayed the same in Europe since the Holocaust? There was always underlying anti-Semitism in Europe. And I guess there was anti-Semitism here. When I was growing up, I was never aware of it. I never saw it. I never experienced it. And the upsurge in anti-Semitism, which I experienced, was after the massacre by Hamas, a terrorist group, in Israel on October 7th, 2023. They went in there and killed thousands of Israelis, and they annihilated entire families, generations, grandparents, parents, and the children. It was a horrible, horrible massacre. It was like another Holocaust for the Jews. And so Israel fought back like Israel has to, because if they don't fight back, there's not going to be an Israel. So they fought back, and then the world turned against Israel. The media started spreading stories that Israel was committing genocide in Gaza, which was never true. Israel would actually let the Palestinians know every time that they were going in and told them to take cover. they're the only army that warns you ahead of time before they attack. And what Gaza did, what Hamas did in Gaza, they put the children's centers in the hospitals where they were fighting. They created all these tunnels, and they put children and the Palestinians in harm's way so Israel would look bad, and it turned the world against the Jews. And the Jews have been trying to get out of that since. So Hamas was as brutal as the Nazis, if not worse than the Nazis. So for many years, we as Jews were pretty complacent because we weren't under the terrorist attack until Hamas did it. And the Jews in Israel are very resilient. And my mother would always tell me, had there been in Israel didn't become independent until 1948. She was liberated in 1945. And she said, had there been in Israel, her family would not have all been murdered. She would have had the IDF soldiers fighting for them. And she feels, and I feel the same way, without Israel, Jews are in trouble. Israel is our safety valve. Israel keeps us secure. And Israel won't let anything happen to us. So yes, Israel fights back. The Jews have to fight back because during the Holocaust, 6 million were murdered, and they did not have a means to fight back. A few of them were partisan fighters in the woods, and they got some ammunition, but a lot of them were all killed because they couldn't stand up to all the Nazi armies. They were by themselves, and they didn't get help from the Allies until the end of the war, until 1944, and the war started in 1939. So Israel is fundamental to the security and safety of the Jewish people. And so we need the strength of Israel for survival. Thank you.